Hi board gamers and welcome back to Not Board Gaming. I'm your host, I'm Mark. Now today's episode we're going to be looking at Chronicles of Crime with its two expansions, which are the Noir Expansion and the Welcome to Redview 80s set kind of Stranger Things type expansion. Now off the bat I want to say that these are review copies provided to me by the very nice people at Lucky Duck Games, and I want to have a look at the solo experience of this. We know that Chronicles of Crime has been out for a while. There are some new games coming out soon from the Chronicles of Crime series as well. I think it's Chronicles of Crime 1400. There's a future one as well. They're all coming out really soon. But I thought I would go back and have a look at the base game of Chronicles of Crime with the two expansions of Noir and Welcome to Redwood and look at them from a solo perspective and find out, as a solo player, do they offer the same kind of playability and replayability that the game does to multiplayers? And I know it's been exceptionally well received by a lot of people, obviously playing in a kind of multiplayer party type atmosphere. But I thought I'd take an in-depth look at the solo version. So let's delve deep into Chronicles of Crime and find out just how this plays as a solo player. Police work, you know the score. You're kind of busting ass and taking names down. You know, you're kind of running around a city and you're solving crimes. You maybe jump in a big flash fancy car and you screech across the city and you interrogate suspects and you press on them. You know, you're a hard person. You kind of live by the seat of your pants. You don't necessarily follow the rules, but you get the job done, and the captain's going to chew you out at any point, but that's okay because you're effective. Yeah, he's going to ask for your gun and your badge, but you know you're going to get it back because you are police work. You do police work. The police would not exist without you. If you're on an American cop show, you see, Chronicles of Crime by Lucky Duck Games doesn't really follow that kind of ilk. If you want a game like that, then by all means go and check out Brook City by Blacklist Games and the Sadler Brothers, which I reviewed in an earlier episode. If you click the link up there, you can check out the review for Brook City, and that really does give you that kind of 80s cop running around trying to solve crimes and busting asses and taking names and all that kind of stuff, whereas Chronicles of Crime, certainly we'll talk about the base game before we get onto the Noir and Welcome to Redview expansions, but Chronicles of Crime, the base game, is about the staple of police work. And no, I'm not talking paperwork here. I'm talking investigation. Chronicles of Crime is an investigative crime game where you and up to 3 other players, but let's concentrate on the solo game for now, where you will take on the role of an investigating officer, generally looking after a murder or a kidnap, or maybe both, and trying to solve the crime within the time limits given. So, in Chronicles of Crime by Lucky Duck Game, immersion is the key, and in the base game, you get to play that most celebrated of TV detectives. That's right, the middle-aged, overweight, high blood pressure with a drinking problem police investigator. Now, of course, you know, I care about this channel and these reviews, so I went method for this, and after months and months of, let's say, 49 years of training, I managed to achieve the perfect physique and blood pressure to play a police investigator. In the Noir expansion, you get to play a 1940s private investigator, and in the Welcome to Redview expansion, you get to play one of 4 as a solo player, or, you know, obviously if the more of you can play more of them, young kids in the 80s solving a crime. So, Chronicles of Crime, an investigative procedural game. How do we kind of lock into the various murders and kidnappings that are happening? How do we bust this case wide open? Well, of course, it's with that most, how can we put it, the tools of the trade that the police can no longer do without. We're talking a smartphone and QR codes. Yes, I know that was an iPad, but that's because I'm using my phone to record this. And of course, that means that you can play your Chronicles of Crime game with any kind of smart enabled device. There's an app to download from one of the app stores, and when you do, that leads you nicely into each of the scenarios that come with the base game. There's also an option to purchase more scenarios as well. Now, normally at this point, I'd probably go into an overview on the contents that you get in Chronicles of Crime, but in reality, it's a fairly rudimentary board. It's some location cards, which each have QR codes on them, and it's also these cards with QR codes on them for clues and for investigating and for searching. And in the base game, that really is it. It really is an app-driven board game experience. Whoa, I can hear you say, an app-driven board game. No. This is an app game with some cardboard contents. Or is it a cardboard game with an app-driven mechanism behind it? Doesn't really matter. Look, this is a game that kind of crosses a couple of boundaries. It kind of links between the world of smartphones and the world of board games. Now, there are people out there that say it's not a board game, it's not even a game, it's an experience, and I'll leave you to make your own minds up about that. But you know, the truth of the matter is you cannot play this game without having the app installed. So if app-driven board games aren't for you, then go and watch one of our other reviews instead. So you would think that because Chronicles of Crime is an app-based game, it's a board game. There is app integration, you've got lots of cards to play with, you've got QR codes, that there would be a fairly hefty and meaty rulebook. But as you can see here, no. The rulebook itself is some kind of 7 pages long, and in reality, it's very kind of easily laid out, and it's almost negligible as to whether you need it. And in fact, they say on the game box there, there's no need for a rule book. Look at that. No need to read the rules. Just jump into the app and play the tutorial. And I think that is a real benefit for this game, is the fact that it is an absolute breeze to learn how to play the game. And I know we're concentrating on the solo game. If you're teaching it to other people, it's an absolute breeze to teach as well. So yeah, it's all very well and good saying that you don't need a rule book, but how true is that? Well, in reality, it's exceptionally true. First of all, first thing you're going to do is you're going to lay out this evidence board, which, you know, is the same for all the cases basically. And here you have some spaces to put cards, but invariably they will move to other places. And at the side here, you can see these spaces, and they're where you're going to put your locations when the game calls for you to put locations there. And we'll talk about that in a bit. Now, at the bottom, certainly on the base game, you're always going to put Scotland Yard down there, and Scotland Yard has its own QR code. When you want to speak to somebody at Scotland Yard, you would scan that code and do it as well. And there are also kind of 4 assistants, if you like, in the game. So the first one is Lou Chin, who's a scientist in the forensic laboratory, so any kind of forensic evidence you need to discuss, you would scan that code in, and then you would discuss with Lou Chin. There's Jeremy King, who's the doctor, so anything to do with the body itself, and how it died, what happened to it at the morgue, you scan that one in. Harvey Marshall, who's a criminologist, so as you go around the game, you're going to find out about various people. You want to speak to the criminologist about these people, find out more about them. And then the Intelligence Bureau, Eric Gloomferry, who's the hacker, so any kind of technological devices that you've got, again, you will scan those in. So invariably, you know, in the kind of multiplayer game, you would pass those out to various people so they can act those roles out. In this game, obviously, because we're not doing that, it's solo, you will play the part of all these people. So, that's it. We've got the app as well, and the app, as you go into the first tutorial, and what I've done here is I've gone into the tutorial scenario here, because what I don't want to do is obviously spoil the main game for people, yeah? I'll try and keep this as spoiler-free as possible, but it tells you, it kind of guides you along. Now, there is music. As you can hear the time, tick, 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 going there. I will obviously keep that off for the purposes of this video. So here we go. So the chief officer is a character 33 signalled. Let me just go back one. It tells you a little bit about it. Yeah. So tells you it's a tutorial scenario. Set up the evidence board and the forensic contacts, and let's start. Chief officer is character number 33. Pull him from the character deck and place him in Scotland Yard. So you also get this deck of 1 to 55 characters, and these will take, you know, all these characters will appear at some point in all of the scenarios. And there's number 33, who's a chief officer, and we're going to place him down in Scotland Yard, down there, and I'll just move this up so you can see that a little bit better. And there we go. And you can see he's got his own QR code as well, so when I need to speak to him, I'm going to scan him. So here we are, we're back. And what I'm going to do now is I will just move all this up so we can see what happened is I will place my camera over the Chief Officer's QR code, and I'm going to hold this to scan. And there we go. It's come up with some text here, and that is how the game works. You're going to scan and read and scan and read. At last you're here. I have a case for you. An old woman, number 7, has been found dead. I need you to find out if it's a natural death or a homicide. Oh my God, so an old woman has been found dead. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull number 7 out of this deck of cards, and here we go. There's the poor old lady who's dead there, number 7. And for the moment, we're going to place her up on this kind of evidence part of the board here. However, that may change. Let's see what else the Chief of Police has to say. You're currently in interrogation mode. The image and the name of the person, blah, blah, blah. So you should now place number 7 on the board, which I have done. So I want to then ask the Chief of Police about the old woman. So I'm going to put my camera over her QR card and scan it. And here it says, this woman is Anna Taylor. She's been found dead at her home in the Notting Hill District G. And here's the address. Maybe you should go there and investigate. So what I'm going to do now is I mentioned these location cards earlier. It's reference G. Each one has a particular letter on there. And there we can see that's G. I'm going to put that there and I'm going to move Anna, the dead old lady, over to G. Okay? So the Chief of Police tell me to go there and maybe, investigate. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Telling you how to do it there. And then what I need to do now is press goodbye. I don't want to speak to the Chief of Police anymore. Press goodbye. And then I'm going to go over to Notting Hill to have a look at Anna's apartment. And how do I do that? Well, as you can see, on the bottom of each of the location cards, there's another QR code. I'm going to scan that. And that transports me over to Notting Hill. And I'm now in the victim's apartment, as indicated on the top of the screen. It tells you up there. And I can scan. However, each scan makes a clock in the upper right corner move forward. And I will talk about that in a second. And you can also search the location for clues. And that's a really interesting mechanic. Before we get to the searching mechanic, though, let's talk about that timer that was mentioned just a few seconds ago in the game. You see, Chronicles of Crime is a time-based game. Every crime that you're trying to solve and every case that you're trying to solve in this game has a timer function on it. The timer function progresses every time you scan either a location or a clue or one of the suspects that you're wanting to discuss or a victim that you're wanting to discuss. For example, to scan a particular person and to have a conversation with them, that would move the timer on by 5 minutes. However, for me to actually move from a location, so to move from Scotland Yard to say Notting Hill, will knock 20 minutes off my timer or increase the time by 20 minutes, as in it's on a real-time clock basis, semi-real-time clock basis, and I'll come to that in a second. So the more that the game allows you to absolutely scan and gain as many clues as you want and speak to as many people as you want at the expense of the fact that the more times that you scan, the faster the timer goes and the sooner your game will come to an end. And in some scenarios, beating that clock is a key thing. There is a kidnap scenario where you have to absolutely try and solve something before the timer runs out. So that's a really interesting mechanism that's in here. However, it's semi-real time. So every time I scan something, obviously, the timer moves forward. However, if I'm in the middle of a game and I decide I want to go downstairs to make myself a cup of coffee and a sandwich, and the game is saying 9:25 because that's what I've scanned into there so far, I could spend half an hour downstairs, come back upstairs, and that timer wouldn't have moved 1 second. And that's kind of important as well, because you do tend to feel this need, so when you first start playing the game, of rushing along. And don't be fooled into that. The timer only progresses each and every scan that you do. So searching is a fundamental part of this game, and how you search is you're going to press on the search for clues button, then you're going to look at the screen, stand and turn around as the screen moves with you and move up and down and look a little bit strange. I can only imagine that this is exactly how modern day policing works. You take your device, you don't look at where you are actually, and you just move up and down a bit like an automaton trying to find clues. Is that right? Actually, I am being slightly facetious there, because searching, pretty much like a lot of how this game works, is kind of unique, and that's the beauty of this game. It's not necessarily what it's doing, it's how it does things. So, searching for clues for an apartment. We're in Notting Hill, we're going to search Anna's apartment, and what you do is you press a button and it allows you to then scan the room, and yes, you can stand up and move the phone with you and it will move around with you, or you can move it on your screen using your fingers. Now, as you can tell, I've moved to an iPhone for this. The iPad was just getting a bit too big and unwieldy for me to actually use in an overhead camera scenario. So here's what we'll do. We shall search for clues. I'm going to press this button. We're in Anna's apartment in Notting Hill. And the first thing it asks me is if I want to use the glasses. Now, there are some glasses that you will slot your phone into, and it will give you a virtual reality type experience as you're looking around the room. I don't have those glasses, so we shall press without, and here's what it's going to do. It's going to count down, and we're going to move into Anna's apartment, and here's where the searching happens. So as you can see, we're in this apartment, and you can move with your fingers, you can look up and down, and there we go. There's Anna, and unfortunately she's deceased, and she's got quite a few dead cats with her. What else is in here? Well, there's some flowers, there's some cards, so it looks like a game of bridge is taking place. Let's look on the floor. What else? Oh, look, there's a piece of paper with some writing on it. There's a cake. There's, what else? Dead cats, telephone, there's the cake itself there, and what else? There's the dead lady, and Maurice pictures. What's here? Some kind of, it looks like it could be bridge, dead cats, and there we go, the screen has now timed out. So now we've searched the apartment, what do we do? So now you can start to see things building up. We've been to the police station, we've been given a case, we've been to the apartment, we've seen that there's a dead old lady, and now we've searched the apartment. And as I was going around there, I was shouting out various things that I could see. Now, if you're in a multiplayer scenario, of course you would shout that out and people would frantically look through the clue cards to try and find something that related to that. Now, here's where it's slightly different in the solo game, is that it becomes almost a memory game, in the fact that you're looking around this apartment and you're shouting things out to yourself, maybe making notes, although it's very difficult to hold the phone and make notes at the same time, and you only get that limited time. Then you've got to find the cards afterwards, so suddenly it becomes a slightly different game. I'm not going to say more difficult, because it's only your interpretation of what you're seeing here, but a very, very different game. Now, one of the things, obviously, a few of the things I shouted out were games and toys. Obviously, I saw that there was a bridge game going on. Animals, there were some dead cats there. And I also saw cake, so we could see food there. So what we can do now is, now that that search area is finished, is we can scan these items and see what happens. So therefore, if I was to scan food, you would see there that it comes up that, yep, there's food there and it's been taken away into evidence, and I add that to my board as a clue. Now, what I can do is now contact the forensic scientist and ask her about the food, and she will give me some indication of what's there. So what you do then is you then leave the scene, you go and scan the forensic scientist, then you scan the food card, and they will give you the indication there of what's happened with that food. And as you can see, it's poison. It's asking me to take special item number 4 and add that to my board. So now I have some clues, and I know there's some poison there. You can see that things are starting to kind of formulate into some sort of plan. And so the game progresses. Look, I'm not going to show you any more of even the tutorial case. You'll have to find out what happened to Anna by playing the game. But the game, you can see how the game progresses. New people are going to be kind of unveiled. New locations unlocked. You'll go and search them, and you'll start piecing this kind of tapestry of clues together to formulate an idea on exactly what has happened. And all the while, that timer, every time you scan something, every time you change location, is ticking away from you. And at some point, what's going to happen is you're going to get called back to Scotland Yard and you're going to have to present your findings and your decisions on what's happened. Now, the end screen gives you a list of questions, basically. And those questions ask you, who killed the old lady? What was the motive behind it? How was she killed? Who sent blah blah? And I'm not going to give the clue away there. And there are various things it will ask you. Some of them you will have uncovered and some of them you won't have, because I think the first time you play any particular scenario, you're not going to discover the entirety of all the clues. Look, if we look at the box, there's a picture of a police guy studying there, this wall of evidence. That is not kind of just an artist's depiction just for the sake of it. That actually gives you an indication of what this game is about. You are collecting clues, you are visiting locations, you are speaking to your various cohorts, be it the criminologist, or be it the hacker, or the doctor, or the forensic scientist, and you're trying to piece everything together in a coherent story. So when you get called back to Scotland Yard to answer the crime, and but to kind of give your solution to the crime, you have as complete a story as possible. And that is exactly what you will spend a lot of your time in this game doing, is studying this wall of evidence. The end game is what? So you've unveiled as much evidence as you can, as many clues as you can. You've gone back to Scotland Yard. You've answered everything that has been asked of you as best as you can, to the best of your ability. What is the outcome? Well, you're going to be given a score, and that's what you're playing this game for, is that score. Except it's not really what you're playing this game for. What you're playing this game for is the experience of kind of getting to that stage where you get that score. Now, it is entirely possible that in one case you uncover something that may crop up in another case. So there is a progressive story element that can take place in Chronicles of Crime as well, which kind of links things together, and that's really, really interesting as well. You will find out about certain things maybe that may kind of have an impact in another scenario. I'm not going to give the game away at all, and certainly as you play Welcome to Redview as well, that really starts to take place in there. So yeah, the end score is I suppose for completionists only, because once you've got that score, do you really want to go back and do the entire scenario to find out what you've missed? Because some of the questions that it asks you at the end to get you to that score actually give away what you should have been looking for in the first place. But you know what? This is a game that's not necessarily about the destination. This is a journey game, and there's a lot of fun to be had in this relatively inexpensive kind of £25 box with a number of scenarios that you can play straight away without a massive tutorial. You can get straight into this, but that's just the base game. Before I get on to true final thoughts, let's have a look at the two expansions, which are the Noir Expansion and also Welcome to Redview. So, it should come as no surprise that the Noir and Welcome to Redview expansions, which I think are about £20 each, play in more or less the same way as the base game of Chronicles of Crime. Of course, they're set in a different time period and crime period, if you want to. The base game of Chronicles of Crime is obviously set in modern day. Then Noir, which I think was the first expansion, is set in the 40s, and of course, Welcome to Redview is set in the 1980s. Now, handily, the base game comes with storage solutions for both Noir and Welcome to Redview, so everything fits in here. Each expansion has its own set of cards, so there's the Welcome to Redview cards. There are the Noir cards, and here we have the main base game cards as well. And here you have the storage capability as well. So of course each expansion comes with its own locations as well. So there we go. There are the Noir location cards there. And you can tell they're Noir because they have a little hat on the back. And here we have Welcome to Redview locations, and you can tell they're Redview locations because they have a little baseball cap on the back as well. Now, Welcome to Redview also comes with a number of character cards as well, so you get to play potentially different characters in Welcome to Redview. And also handily, Welcome to Redview calls itself an RPG, and we'll come on to that in a sec. But the base game comes with a little storage area there for the dice that you're using Welcome to Redview, and also the energy bar tokens as well. There's a little space there if you've got the VR type glasses. So I think that's an ingenious and almost fantastic thing by the guys at Lucky Duck, is they thought about the expansions, they thought about how they can fit in the base game box, and they absolutely do. You put those and the instructions from Noir and Redwood and the main rulebook and the main board that you're going to use all in the same box. Now, I will say you absolutely need the base game of Chronicles of Crime to be able to play Noir and Welcome to Redview, because you're going to use some of the same cards and the board in Welcome to Redview and Noir as you do in the main game of Chronicles of Crime. So let's take a little bit of a closer look inside at, should I say, the Noir expansion and Welcome to Redview and how they differ from the base game. So Noir takes place in the years after kind of World War II, and you're in Los Angeles, and you're not working for the police. What you are is you're a private detective. You're a gumshoe. You're being hired by various people. Maybe it's to investigate the death of a movie starlet, or maybe there's some corruption going on in government officials or in the local mayor's office. There's lots of things happening in Noir that are all of the time period. Look, I love Noir. Noir is probably my favourite genre. I love the old black and white films. I've read everything that James Ellroy has published. Noir is my absolute thing, so I was really looking forward to this. You play this lone wolf kind of detective, but because it's set in the kind of post-World War II era in LA, because you're not working for the police, you have to find other ways of kind of getting information or finding your way into places, and here's where some of the differences start to take place. So the main gameplay is more or less exactly the same. You're going to go to locations, maybe a club, or maybe somebody's apartment. This is your home office, if you like, and you're going to ask people questions. You're going to investigate. Maybe you shall, speak to a photographer in the local paper to find something out, but you don't have the backup of the police. So you have various things that you can do. One of them is you can scan this card for intimidation. Maybe you just want to go a little bit heavier on this person. However, some suspects react really badly to intimidation, and they can seek revenge, or even they can attack you themselves. Or maybe you can't get into a place and you want to break into the place, man. So yeah, you can break into that place. However, there's a downside to that. If you spend too much time in one place, illegally, you can get caught and you can get thrown in jail, or you can even get killed for it. Or maybe, corruption, some bribery going on there. So absolutely, cash is a commodity in the Noir version of this game. You can earn cash and you can also spend cash on corruption. However, it's rare, and every time you try and bribe somebody, you lose $20. And once you've lost all your money, you lose that ability to do that. The final kind of interplay card that you can do is shadowing. You maybe want to tail somebody for hours at a time, or maybe even days at a time. However, it does take a lot of time, and of course that eats away against your precious time resource. There are doctors that you can consult, there are reporters you can consult, there are movie moguls, there are security guards, there are kind of gangster men in here as well that you can come across. There's a whole plethora and wealth of people. It plays more or less the same as Chronicles of Crime, the base game, but it plays in an entirely different way as well. And as I say, I was really looking forward to this. There is the music that goes along with it in the app, and because you don't get that backing of the police, you have to think about things in a very, very different way when you're playing Chronicles of Crime Noir. Now we're travelling forward to the heady world of kind of mid-80s, before we had mobile phones and internet, and in a Stranger Things type scenario, you're going to play one or more, and I suggest more, of these plucky kids trying to unravel a mystery that starts at the school and then progresses to, well, I'm not going to spoil that for you. And again, what happens here is it changes things. So the basic gameplay is still the same. You're going to travel to various locations, and they're all this kind of wonderful kind of 80s looking mid-American town artwork in the fall, the kind of thing that we loved Spielberg films for. And you're going to play these kids who are investigating something that's happening. It starts off with something at the school and, as I say, moves to somewhere that you don't know. Now, in an effort to change things up, what they've done here, Lucky Duck, is they've introduced what they're calling an RPG type element. So the first thing is that each character that you choose, and you best to choose maybe a few of them that are balanced and provide some balance, come with some modifiers here. And what are these modifiers? Well, I'll explain exactly how they work in a second, but the first one here is your fitness, and you get +2. The next one is your speech, and it's your ability to interact, to bluff, and to read emotions. And then the final one is your mind, it's your wits, it's your knowledge and your perception, because in this game, periodically, you're going to have to carry out certain tests. And to do those tests, you're going to have to roll dice on a skill test and to get a kind of success from that. And a success is a 5 or a 6. So what you're going to do is you're going to take one of these dice and you're going to roll it. There we go. There we go. So say I'm taking a test that requires fitness, is I'm going to roll it and I need a 5 or a 6. Now, I've scored a 2. I have +2 on that. That means I haven't actually passed the test. That's not strictly true, because if it's an easy test, what would happen is I would also get +1, or if it's a hard test, I would get -1. So if it was an easy test and I'd rolled that and I'd got 4 +1 for doing an easy test, then that would then give me a success. However, if it was a hard test, then that wouldn't allow me to obviously take that as well. Now, what you can also do as well is you get these kind of energy bars. And what these energy bars are is you will use them and you will move them over to, so you start with your kind of energy bar available there, and if you fail the test, you can flip an energy bar over and re-roll that test to try and get you a pass, and that's how you can do it throughout the game. So that's what they're calling an RPG element. It still plays exactly the same. You're still investigating and solving crimes. The only difference is, well, not the only difference, one of the major differences is that you, again, time limited, and you're going to have to go back home, or you're going to be in some sort of curfew. But the board you use is exactly the same. You're going to be using the base clues as well as it having its own deck of clues, specific items, kind of, or special items, which you will do. And then, of course, there's this card. And if you want to know what that card is, you're going to have to play the game. Again, it's taking it in a drastically different direction while still maintaining the kind of core functionality of the game you know and love of Chronicles of Crime. Okay, not board gamers, so final thoughts on Chronicles of Crime by Lucky Duck Games. Look, I think we'll start off by saying there is so much to like about this game. Let's just move the price point to one side for 1 second, because at £29 maximum for the base game, there's no denying that there's a lot of value in the box. But let's not focus on the price point. Let's talk about the technology and what Lucky Duck and David Cicurel has managed to do here is create something that's a little bit unique in a genre that already has games like Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective and Detective and Modern Crime Story. They managed to fuse kind of the board game genre and the app genre, which I know is kind of abhorrent to some board gamers, together into a package that absolutely works. Look, this is in terms of a product, where it's aimed, what it's positioned at, it's absolutely first rate. They've managed to achieve exactly what they set out to achieve, which is bringing something to the masses. And I know that there are a lot of kind of non-board gamers that are buying Chronicles of Crime and experiencing what modern board games are like for the first time. So kind of congratulations to them for that. Now, I have played it with other people as well as playing solo, and I can absolutely say that this game really does shine when you're playing it with more people. However, the solo experience is not one to be negated. It becomes a slightly different game. Obviously, when you're playing with other people, you're shouting out these clues as and when you're seeing them, you're having the dialogue, the back and forth, and that creates this whole kind of social construct there, which is really interesting. As a solo player, it really is just you trying to scan the scene, remember what you've seen as you're interviewing the various suspects, etc., and people of interest. Then you're trying to remember all that information, and I would say that the solo game becomes more akin to this picture on the front of the box, where you become the kind of lone person, kind of trying to work things out, trying to assess all the clues and everything that you found and trying to get to the bottom of the case. However, and I think this is where potentially as a solo player the cracks just start to show a little bit. As a multiplayer game, the interaction on how far you achieve in any particular scenario or any particular crime is probably, whether you solve that crime or not, is outweighed by the interaction you've had with other people. As a solo player, whilst not necessarily one-shot scenarios, once you get to the end screen, the timer's told you that you're there, and you're giving your solution, because of the way that it asks questions, it kind of flags up anything that you have missed. It dilutes that kind of need to go back and do the same case again to try and maximise your points. And that's where it starts to lose a little bit. But you know what? The game isn't necessarily designed for that kind of replayability. There are 5 cases or 5 scenarios within the core game, and then you have this wealth of downloads that you can get. So it does offer a certain amount of replayability, but it kind of dilutes that experience a little bit. I like the base game of Chronicles of Crime, but it feels more like a team game than a solo game. However, to move on to Noir, you obviously need the base game to get to Noir, and you need to understand the mechanics behind that. And then when we look at Noir, now this for me as a solo game is where this game really shines. You know, as I mentioned earlier, I am a massive fan of the Noir genre. And here you are playing a lone gumshoe, you're a lone private detective, going out there, strong-arming people, kind of bribing your way into situations. This thematically fits the solo game, or the solo player, I would say, far more than the base game of Chronicles of Crime. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with Noir. It's I've really enjoyed that gaming experience. This year, that's really surprised me. I thought I might enjoy it. I was hoping that they hadn't dropped the ball. And despite some kind of old world writing and slightly misogynistic views in Noir, it does play as a solo game exceptionally well. It's slightly more complex, the case is kind of more sprawling. But what I do like in Noir is that some actions that you take relatively early in the game come back and kind of bite you in the backside a little bit later on. So if you strong-arm somebody, they may well hold a grudge for you for the rest of the game, and that's a really interesting and neat mechanic. Look, I play Noir with the lights low, with the app on, with a glass of whiskey, and for me it's just a great experience. So I really enjoyed Noir, more so I would say, than I enjoyed the base game. Now we get to Welcome to Redview, and this is a genre that I really should enjoy. Look, I'm a child. I was born in 1970. I'm a child of the 80s. I was a similar age to what these guys are in this adventure at the time that it's set. So I was genuinely looking forward to this. I do like Stranger Things, etc. And this, out of all the experiences, is the one that fell flat for me. There are some nice mechanics in there. The way that some of the stuff that you kind of encounter early on comes back later on in the game and plays a part in there, and I think that's a really interesting mechanic. But Lucky Duck have called this an RPG type experience, and in reality it's a couple of energy bar tokens that you flip over and a die that you roll to kind of make tests successes or not, and it takes away some of the fun. The thing about these games is that everything, the kind of base game and the Noir game, is that everything is based on your actions. Here, because they've introduced a look element, it's not an RPG element, it's just a die-based look roll, suddenly, no matter what you do, you can start losing tests. Yes, it opens up different narratives for you, but it just took away from the experience and really dragged me out of the enjoyment that I'd had from Chronicles of Crime and from Chronicles of Crime Noir. Look, because you're meant to play this with multiple characters, this is the least solo experience that's there. It's not that it's not enjoyable. There are parts of it that I really did enjoy, but as a whole, it just didn't cling together as an adventure for me. So yeah, in terms of ranking from solo experience, I would say that Noir thematically absolutely is perfect for a solo experience. Obviously, you need the base game to play Noir, so then you get Chronicles of Crime, which is still a very, very good solo experience, but shines with more people. And then as a solo player afterwards, I would say that Redview is potentially a kind of you don't necessarily need to buy Welcome to Redview as a solo player. I think, again, if you don't mind that element of luck that goes in there and kind of takes away from some of the hard work you've put in, then you might enjoy it, but I would say it's probably more for more than one player there. So overall, my experience with Chronicles of Crime so far has been great. I really enjoyed this. The price point, let's come back to that now, we're £29 for the base game. Yes, the replayability is stripped out, but there are options there to download more scenarios, and there's a community online. You can download the information which allows you to make your own scenarios, so there's almost, if you've got the time, or you're a member of the community, infinite replayability there, and I think that's something that is just kind of fantastic for the community itself. I really enjoyed my time with Chronicles of Crime. Noir, as I say, is almost thematically, despite some of the misogyny and some of the not great writing, a great solo experience, as is the base game. Redview, we can maybe not as a solo experience, but I would highly recommend this as a solo player if you're looking for something different. Look, a kind of 25 quid for 5-6 scenarios, which is going to take you maybe an hour, a bit longer per scenario there. You're looking at kind of £5 for an hour's play. That's great. It's better value than going to the cinema. Then when you look at the scenarios you can download online, you've got some real value there. I think they're £4.99 each. Occasionally they do have sales, taking that £2.99, but that's another £5 for another hour's play, which, you know, for me, it's what, the price of a pint of beer in a pub. So I think there's potential here for a lot more. And of course we have the Kickstarter, which launches in the next day or so, where you have Chronicles of Crime 1400, Chronicles of Crime 1900, and Chronicles of Crime 2400. And I'm really interested to see what Lucky Duck do with the mechanics of Chronicles of Crime as we move forward. We're going to have the Chronicles of Crime Chronicles progressively, because there's a real IP that's been created here, and congratulations on Lucky Duck, or to Lucky Duck, for creating something that's different enough to stand out in quite a crowded marketplace. From a solo perspective, some of them work, some of them don't. However, you're never going to have anything less than a really good time with Chronicles of Crime. So for me, yeah, if you want to take that leap, it's a recommendation that you go out there as a solo player, you get the base box, and you certainly get Noir and experience what you can experience in the Chronicles of Crime, chronicles that are continuing to chronicle with new Chronicles of Crime. Okay, there we go. Okay, Not Board Gamers, thank you once again for joining me on that journey through Chronicles of Crime with the Noir and Redwood expansions. As you can tell from the video, I'm genuinely impressed with what's there. Really excited to see what comes with the 1400, 1900 and 2400 Kickstarters on Chronicles of Crime, which come to Kickstarter in the next day or so. So yeah, as a solo experience, there's a lot there, and I think it's going to be improved as time goes on. So once again, thank you very, very, very much for joining me. Do remember that you can always join Not Board Gaming on Instagram and on Facebook, and that's always Not Board Gaming, always B-O-R-E-D. Yeah, and do remember obviously to like and subscribe to the channel for more great content. Look, it's been a blast playing through this. Thank you once again to Lucky Duck Games for providing me with copies. Final thing is, like and subscribe to the channel. Check out our other videos, and do remember, if you can't find anybody else to play with, there's nothing wrong with playing with yourselves.